Hello and welcome to Nikolai's genetics lessons. If you take course of the plants or animal selection and breeding, I'm sure that such problem would be on your exam. And here's a problem. A variety of squash has fruits that weigh about 5 pounds each. In a second variety, the average weight is 2 pounds. When the two varieties are crossed, the F1 generation produce fruit with an average weight of 3.5 pounds. When two of these are crossed, a range of fruit weight is found from 2 to 5 pounds. Of 200 offspring, 3 produce fruits weight that is 5 pounds and 3 produce fruits with 2 pounds in weight. How many allelic pairs are involved into the weight difference between the varieties, and approximately how much does each effective gene contribute to the difference. So if you feel that you can solve this problem, I recommend you to pause video here, try to solve this problem on your own first, and when you would be ready you can run video again and you can compare your answer with my answer and explanation. So first of all, how we are going to solve this problem, we have to analyze this problem. We have two squash varieties here. One produce fruits that weigh 5 pounds each, and the second variety produce fruits that weigh 2 pounds. Then we cross, and this is how we are going to get F1 generation. So we cross these two varieties that produce fruits that is uniform size and weighs about 3.5 pounds. But when we cross this F1 generation, self-pollinate, in the next generation we would have a variety of sizes between 2 pounds and 5 pounds. So basically, what does it mean? Imagine that we have one variety whose genotype, for example, would be capital A and capital A. So this is diploid organism with two alleles. Imagine that this is additive trait. So we cross with another parent whose genotype would be small a, small a. If this is going to be additive trait, for example, dominant allele would add, say, 10 centimeters for each allele, so 10 plus 10, and recessive allele, let's say, would add 5 centimeters, so 5 plus 5 centimeters. So when we have one parent who is homozygous dominant, we expect his, for example, tallness to be 20 centimeters, and homozygous recessive plant should be 10 centimeters. But when we cross these two parents with these two genotypes, we are going to get F1 generation, who is going to be heterozygous, and because each allele is additive, so add something to the trait. So we would have here 10 centimeters for dominant allele plus 5 centimeters for the recessive allele. So the tallness of this heterozygous F1 generation plant would be 15 centimeters. So here we have total 20 centimeters, here we have 10 centimeters, and here we have progeny that is on the average 15 centimeters, because this is additive trait. So this is a short explanation what we have here. We have one parent, once again, that produce fruits that weighs 5 pounds each, another produce 2 pounds. So, but we don't know how many alleles or loci control this trait. In my example, as you see, we have only one loci and two alleles, dominant and recessive. And now we have to find, according to our problem and also given information, we have to find how many loci, how many alleles control this trait. So we would see the picture that is described in our problem. And here is another example that would help you to understand this problem. So as you see, in F1 generation we have all the progeny that is going to be heterozygous. So what would happen if we would cross heterozygous progeny among itself? We also call it self-pollinate. So one parent would be heterozygous, so capital A, small a, and we would cross with the same genotype. So we cross F1 generation among itself. And distribution of the genotypes and phenotypes would be as follows. Capital A here, capital A small a here, capital A small a here, and small a here. As you see, here we would have one representative of the progeny of the F2 generation. That, as you see, we have here two dominant alleles, each would give 10 centimeters. So this genotype would produce phenotype that is 20 centimeters. And we have another extreme genotype that is small a. Each recessive allele would give 5 centimeters. So the phenotype would be, phenotype means visual characteristics of such plant with such genotype would be 10 centimeters tall. And also, as you see, we have here intermediate genotype that also would produce intermediate phenotype. So dominant allele would give us 10 centimeters and recessive allele would give us 5 centimeters. So total, this phenotype this genotype would produce phenotype that is 15 centimeters. But as you see, distribution is not even. Here we have 1/4. So 1/4 would be very tall, 1/4 would be very short, and 1/2 would be intermediate. Or otherwise, as you remember, for example, if you would take measurements of all the people in your class, distribution would be of the bell shape. So here we would see people who is going to be very short, and there would be very few such people. Here we would have people who is going to be very tall, and also we would find many people who is going to be very tall. And most of the people would be somewhere in the middle, and majority of the people would be of the normal average tallness. And the same we see here in our example, that average would make most of the representative of the F2 generation. So I forgot to put F2 generation here, so this is going to be F2 generation, and extremes would be only 1/4 each. So now I think you have a very good understanding of what's going on in F1 and F2 generation, how traits are distributed, and now we can return to our problem and finally solve it. Once again, we have two varieties. One produce fruits that weighs 5 pounds, another variety produce fruit that is 2 pounds, and 3.5 pounds is exactly in the middle between these two, we can call extremes. And this is what we can see in F1 generation. But when we cross F1 generation, that is going to be hybrids, we are going to get F2 generation, and in F2 generation we can see distribution of the weights. As you remember, in my previous example, if we cross homozygous dominant with homozygous recessive, 100% of the F1 generation going to be heterozygous, so would be uniform. But in F2 generation, when we cross two parents that is going to be heterozygous in all loci, we are going to get distribution of the phenotypes. And of course, phenotype is due to different genotypes. So now we can solve easily this problem using this simple formula. So 1/2 raised n and squared. And this formula stands for the distribution of the genotypes in F2 generation. In order to use this formula, we have also include frequency of the extreme genotype. And according to our problem, we have in the F2 generation 200 offspring, 3, let me underline, so we have 200 offspring, 3 produce fruits that weigh 5 pounds, and this is extreme genotype and phenotype, and 3 produce fruits with 2 pounds in weight. So we have equal number of the extreme phenotypes, and we have distribution of the different phenotypes between these two extremes. So once again, we have 3 out of 200 that belongs to the extreme phenotypes. We only take one, whether it can be those plants that produce biggest fruits, 5 pounds, we have 3 of them out of 200, or we have the same number, 3 that produce 2 pounds in weight. So it doesn't matter in our case, but we don't combine them. We don't say that we have 6 extreme phenotypes. This is true, but we only take one extreme phenotype, whether one that produce biggest fruits or one that produce smallest fruits. So here in our calculations we have not 6 over 200 but only 3 over 200. That would equal to our formula here, 1/2 divided by 2, or sorry, 1 divided by 2 raised n and squared. So what we can do in the next step, we can divide 3 by 200, and our answer here would be 0.015. That would equal to this right part of the formula, and n here in this formula stands for the number of loci that control the trait. So what we can do in the next step, we can take a square root of both sides. So we can take square root here, and we can take square root here to get right of this power of 2 of the right side. So what we are going to get, on the left side we are going to get 0.1225, this is rounded number, and on the right side we are going to get 1/2 raised n, and we don't have power of 2 anymore here. So how we are going to solve for n? We have to find a reciprocal of each number on the left side and on the right side. What is the reciprocal? This is such a number that every number has. If we multiply this number by reciprocal, we are going to get 1. For example, what is the reciprocal of 5? Reciprocal of 5 would be 1/5. So if we multiply 5 by 1/5, we are going to get 1. What is the reciprocal of 2? This is 1/2. If we multiply 2 by 1/2 or 0.5, this can be decimal number, so we are going to get 1. And for example, reciprocal of say 10 would be 0.1. If we multiply 10 by 0.1, we are going to get also 1. And vice versa, what is the reciprocal of 0.1? This is going to be 10. If we multiply 0.1 10 times, we are going to get 1. What is the reciprocal of 1/2? This is going to be 2. If we multiply 0.5 by 2, we are going to get 1. What is the reciprocal of 0.2 or 1/5? This is 5. If we multiply 0.2 by 5, we are going to get 1. So as you see, this is very easy. Every number has its own reciprocal. And for example, what is the reciprocal of this number? This is very easy to calculate. We have to divide 1 by this number, 0.1225, and we are going to get reciprocal of this number. And the reciprocal would be 8.165. So this is going to be reciprocal of this number. If we multiply this number by this number, we are going to get 1. So here on the left side, we got a reciprocal. And what is the reciprocal of 1/2? And reciprocal of 1/2 would be 2. If we multiply 1/2 by 2, we are going to get 1. So we have a reciprocal on the left side, we have reciprocal on the right side. Of course, this is going to be raised n. And now it is very easy to say what is the number n. So we have to multiply 2, 3 times by itself. So we also can say that 2 multiplied by 2 and multiplied by 2 going to be 8. And 8 is very close to this number. So in other words, we can say that 8.165 equal to 2 raised 3 in power of 3. So here we should put 3. And this is going to be our answer. Our answer would be that this trait in our example is under the control of the 3 loci. Let me clean a space and one more time demonstrate what we got in as an answer. So we have genotype of the first parent capital A, capital A, capital B, and capital C, capital C. So here we have 3 genes, gene A, gene B, and gene C. That give us 3 loci and give us 6 alleles. And when we cross this genotype and this parent with another parent whose genotype is small a, small b, small b, and small c, so this parent, as you see, produce 5 pounds fruits, and this parent produce 2 pounds fruits. And when we cross these two parents, we are going to get genotype of the F1 generation, that is small a, capital A, small a, capital B, small b, and capital C, small c. This intermediate genotype, as you remember, produce fruits uniform size that is 3.5 pounds in size, in weight, and 2 pounds here, and 5 pounds here. And when we cross F1 generation, so this is going to be F1 generation, and this is going to be parental generation. When we cross this genotype with itself, we can expect that extreme genotypes or phenotypes, when this trait is additive, this is not simple Mendelian genetics. So capital A and small a wouldn't be the same phenotype as capital A, capital A. For example, if each allele would add something to the total picture, capital A and small a, as you see, would be different than capital A, capital A. This is not simple Mendelian genetics, this is additive trait. So if, for example, this at some value, small a recessive allele would add small value, not the same as a dominant allele. So these two genotypes would produce different phenotypes. That's why this genotype here is not the same as this phenotype. So phenotypically these two would be different. This would be 3.5 pounds in weight, and this genotype here would be 5 pounds. So how we can find how each allele add to the trait, this is very easy. As you see here, this genotype produce fruits that weigh 5 pounds. That means that we have to divide 5 by 6 allele. All of them are dominant alleles, so we would know how much additive is one dominant allele, how much one dominant allele add to this trait. And here we have also 6 alleles, 6 recessive alleles, and phenotype would be 2 pounds fruits. So we have to divide 2 by 6. So we would know how much each recessive allele adds to the trait. And of course, when we would know these two numbers, we can easily find the fruit weight of this genotype. Or for example, you can say if we would have genotype that is capital A, capital A, capital B, and small c, that this genotype also would produce fruits that would weigh 3.5 pounds. Because here we have the same number of dominant alleles as in previous example, and the same number of recessive alleles as in previous example. Because this is additive trait, the weight of the fruits would be the same as in this example. So as you see, calculations are very easy, and now I hope that you would perform well on your exam. And this is all for today. Thank you for your attention. Please subscribe for my new videos that I post almost every day. Thumbs up if you like this video. Please write your comments, questions if you have any. And see you in the next video. Goodbye.